There is a moment in every connection where power quietly changes hands, not through manipulation, not through silence, not through games, but through alignment. And most people miss this moment because they are too busy trying to be chosen instead of choosing themselves. The symbol shift that makes avoidance suddenly obsess again is not something you do to them. It is something you return to within yourself. When you stop chasing clarity, explanations, or reassurance, something ancient activates. Avoidant energy is wired to move away from pressure, but lean toward mystery. When your nervous system is dysregulated, when you seek them to calm yourself, they feel it instantly. They don't hear your words, they feel your need. And need, no matter how loving, feels like a demand to someone who has learned that closeness equals loss of self. The shift begins when you decide that your peace is not negotiated. You stop trying to be understood by someone who is still afraid of understanding themselves. You stop shrinking your needs to keep the connection alive. You stop offering emotional labor as proof of worth. And when you do this, something profound happens. The energetic contract changes. You see, avoidants don't obsess because they are chased. They obsess when the emotional field becomes quiet, but grounded. When you are no longer reacting, explaining, or waiting, they feel the absence of pressure and the presence of strength at the same time. This confuses their old patterns. Their nervous system expects pursuit or withdrawal. What it does not expect is calm independence paired with emotional depth. This is where divine alignment enters. When you choose self regulation over self abandonment, you are no longer operating from fear. You are operating from truth, and truth has gravity. You stop asking, why don't they choose me? And start asking, why did I stop choosing myself? That question alone begins to reorder your energy. You don't disappear to punish. You don't detach to provoke. You simply return home to yourself. You invest in your body, your purpose, your calling, your joy. You speak less, but when you do speak, your words land because they are not charged with desperation. They are anchored in certainty. Avoidants feel this shift as loss, not of you, but of control. The control they had when you were predictable, available, emotionally flexible. Now you are steady. Now you are centered. Now you are no longer trying to convince them of your value. You are embodying it. And embodiment is magnetic. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be unforgettable, you become unforgettable. The moment you stop trying to be chosen, you become the reference point they can't replace. Because what you offer now is not emotional overgiving. It is emotional safety without attachment. This is not about making someone obsess. Obsession is a byproduct. The real shift is becoming someone who no longer needs obsession to feel whole. When you are rooted in purpose, aligned with your worth, and calm in your presence, you activate something deeper than attraction. You activate recognition, and recognition is what unsettles them most. Because now, when they pull away, they don't feel relief. They feel curiosity. When they think of you, they don't feel pressure. They feel peace mixed with longing, and peace to someone who has lived in emotional distance is intoxicating. So don't chase the avoidant. Chase alignment, don't manage their fear. Master your own nervous system. Don't prove your love. Live your truth. When you make this simple shift, you stop being an option and become the standard they quietly compare everyone else to. Most people think connection is built by effort, but effort without alignment becomes pressure. And pressure is the language avoidant energy understands as danger. Emotional chasing doesn't always look like begging or calling too much. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining your feelings, softening your boundaries, waiting longer than feels right, or staying emotionally available when your spirit is tired. Each time you do this, you unknowingly signal that your emotional center is outside of you. You are asking another person to regulate your nervous system. To someone with avoidant patterns, this feels heavy, even if they can't explain why. Emotional sovereignty begins the moment you reclaim that center. It is the internal decision that your peace is your responsibility. You stop outsourcing your sense of safety to someone else's availability. You no longer monitor their tone, their timing, their distance, searching for reassurance. Instead, you learn to sit with uncertainty without collapsing. This is not indifference, this is strength. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows they will be okay whether another person leans in or pulls away. When you shift into emotional sovereignty, your energy changes before your behavior ever does. You are no longer reaching, you are grounded. Your responses slow down. Your words carry less emotional charge. You stop trying to control outcomes because you trust yourself to handle whatever unfolds. Avoidants are deeply sensitive to this shift because their nervous system is constantly scanning for emotional demand. When the demand disappears, but the connection does not become cold, their system doesn't know how to categorize you. Sovereignty does not mean shutting down your heart. It means anchoring it within yourself. You allow emotions to move through you without immediately acting on them. You feel disappointment without chasing relief. You feel longing without turning it into pursuit. This self regulation creates a felt sense of safety that is rare. And rarity creates focus. Focus turns into curiosity. Curiosity quietly becomes obsession. The avoidant is not obsessed with your absence. They are drawn to your stability. They feel the difference between someone who is detached out of fear and someone who is rooted in self respect. When you stop trying to be chosen, you stop vibrating with insecurity. You stop negotiating your worth through effort. Instead, you show up as someone who is emotionally full, not emotionally hungry. This shift activates something primal. Avoidants are used to being the emotional regulator in the connection through distance. When you no longer react to that distance, when you remain calm and self contained, the power dynamic equalizes. They can no longer predict you, not because you are inconsistent, but because you are no longer dependent. And independence paired with warmth is disarming. Emotional sovereignty is also deeply spiritual. It is the alignment between your inner world and your actions. You stop betraying yourself to preserve connection. You trust that what is meant for you will not require self abandonment. This trust radiates. It communicates without words that you are safe to be close to because you are not asking another person to save you from yourself. And when an avoidant senses that being close to you no longer means being responsible for your emotional stability, their defenses soften. They feel drawn back, not by need, but by peace. Reassurance is often misunderstood as love, but in an avoidant dynamic, reassurance quickly becomes a silent contract. Each time you explain your intentions, soothe their fears, or offer emotional certainty on demand, you unintentionally take on the role of emotional stabilizer. To an avoidant nervous system, this does not feel comforting for long. It feels like responsibility, and responsibility, when tied to closeness, awakens their deepest fear, the fear of being consumed, controlled, or losing themselves inside connection. The shift happens when reassurance is no longer something you dispense, but something you embody. Grounded presence replaces verbal convincing. You stop saying, I'm not leaving, and start living in a way that shows you are not abandoning yourself either. Your calm becomes the message, your consistency becomes the signal. Avoidants are far more responsive to what is felt than what is said, even if they don't consciously recognize it. When you remove excessive reassurance, the emotional field changes. The connection no longer feels like a negotiation. You are no longer trying to manage their anxiety or prevent their withdrawal. Instead, you hold space without chasing. This creates a subtle vacuum, not a cold one, but a spacious one. And in that space, their mind begins to wander back to you, not because you pulled away to provoke them, but because the emotional noise disappeared. Grounded presence means you are emotionally available without being emotionally overextended. You listen without fixing. You care without overfunctioning. You allow silence without rushing to fill it. This steadiness is unfamiliar to someone who associates closeness with intensity or obligation. Your calm does not demand anything from them, and that is precisely why it becomes magnetic. There is a sacred confidence in grounded presence. It says, I am here but I am whole without needing you to be a certain way. This removes the invisible pressure avoidants feel to perform, commit, or reassure in return. When pressure leaves, curiosity enters. They begin to check in emotionally, not because they are chased, but because they feel safe to approach. Reassurance often tries to prevent loss. Grounded presence accepts uncertainty without panic. And this acceptance is felt deeply. The avoider. NT senses that you are no longer afraid of their distance. You are not bracing for abandonment. You are not preemptively soothing yourself through them. You trust your own capacity to remain steady. That trust is disarming. This does not mean withholding warmth. It means offering warmth that is regulated. You still express care, but without urgency. You still show interest, but without attachment to outcome. Your energy becomes slow, settled, and self contained. This quality signals emotional maturity, and emotional maturity creates safety without entrapment. When reassurance disappears, the avoidant is left alone with their own feelings, and this is where obsession quietly begins. Without your constant emotional management, their mind has space to feel longing, curiosity, and reflection. They begin to notice your absence not as rejection, but as depth. They remember how calm it felt around you, how unpressured, how real. Grounded presence does not chase attention, it invites recognition. And recognition, once felt, is difficult to forget. Most people believe attachment is fueled by effort, but in truth, it is fueled by freedom. Detachment from outcome does not mean detachment from care. It means releasing the illusion that you can control how another person feels, chooses, or commits. When you are attached to outcome, every interaction carries weight. Every message feels loaded. Every pause feels threatening. Avoidants sense this immediately because their nervous system is highly attuned to emotional expectation. Expectation feels like pressure. Pressure triggers withdrawal. The moment you loosen your grip on outcome, the emotional climate changes. You stop measuring every interaction for signs of progress or danger. You are no longer performing connection in hopes of securing a future. Instead, you are present for what is real now. This presence is lighter. It is breathable. And for someone who associates closeness with suffocation, breathability is irresistible. Detachment is not coldness. It is trust. It is the deep internal knowing that what aligns with you cannot miss you. When you trust this, you stop forcing timelines. You stop pushing conversations toward clarity before they are ready to unfold. You allow things to reveal themselves organically. This patience communicates confidence. And confidence to an avoidant feels safer than intensity. Remaining energetically open while detached is the key. You do not close your heart, you simply stop bracing it against disappointment. You are receptive but not dependent. You enjoy connection without gripping it. This balance is rare. Most people swing between over-attachment and emotional shutdown. When you hold openness without expectation, you become emotionally unpredictable in the healthiest way. Avoidants are accustomed to partners who either chase them or punish them with distance. When you do neither, their patterns lose traction. Your detachment is not reactive. It is rooted. You are not using distance as a tool. You are simply not attaching your worth to their behavior. This forces them to confront their own internal responses rather than reacting to yours. Energetic openness means your warmth remains accessible. Your kindness does not disappear. Your presence is still inviting, but there is no agenda behind it. You are not trying to secure a promise, a label, or reassurance. You are allowing connection to breathe. And when connection breathes, it deepens naturally. The state creates emotional contrast. The avoidant feels your availability without feeling trapped by it. They feel your interest without feeling demanded. This combination awakens desire because it restores agency. They are choosing you rather than responding to pressure. Choice activates engagement. Engagement and builds focus. Focus becomes fixation. Detachment also restores your power. When you are no longer attached to outcome, you stop tolerating misalignment out of fear. You naturally respond from self respect. You are willing to walk away without drama if your needs are consistently unmet. This self trust is felt. It communicates that you are not here to be convinced. You are here to be aligned. Spiritually, detachment is surrender. It is releasing control and allowing truth to surface. When you detach from outcome, you allow divine timing to replace anxious timing. This alignment calms your nervous system and sharpens your intuition. You become clearer, more grounded, more real. And when an avoidant encounters someone who is open, warm, and unattached to outcome, their defenses weaken because for the first time, closeness does not feel like a trap. It feels like an invitation they are free to accept. Avoidant attachment is not awakened by intensity. It is awakened by contrast, not the contrast of hot and cold, but the contrast between what they expect and what they experience. Most avoidants are accustomed to emotional familiarity, patterns where closeness leads to pressure, expectation, or loss of autonomy. When you become the emotional contrast they cannot escape, you disrupt this pattern at its root. Emotional contrast begins when you no longer mirror their avoidance or chase their distance. You remain emotionally steady while they fluctuate. This steadiness creates a reference point in their nervous system. They may not consciously understand it, but their body registers you as different. Around you, there is less anxiety, less urgency, less emotional chaos. And the nervous system remembers relief. When you stop reacting to withdrawal with fear or pursuit, you create space for their internal world to surface. Silence no longer feels like punishment, it feels like neutrality. Your calm response becomes unfamiliar territory. The avoidant expects tension or drama. When it doesn't arrive, their mind returns to you, trying to understand why. This is where obsession begins, not from manipulation, but from unresolved contrast. You embody warmth without demand. You are present without hovering. You care without controlling. This combination is rare, and rarity draws attention. The avoidant begins to compare. Other connections start to feel noisy, heavy, or emotionally transactional. Yours felt clean, spacious, safe. That emotional memory lingers. Contrast is also created through self-respect. When you no longer tolerate inconsistency, but you also don't punish it, you create clarity. You don't beg for effort. You don't threaten departure. You simply adjust your availability in alignment with how you are treated. This silent boundary is powerful. It communicates standards without confrontation. And avoidants are deeply affected by standards they didn't have to fight. Becoming the emotional contrast means you live fully outside the connection. Your life is rich. Your joy is active. Your purpose is visible. You are not waiting by the phone or structuring your life around their availability. This independence shifts how you are perceived. You are no longer a safe fallback. You are a choice. And choice activates desire far more than convenience. Energetically, contrast is felt when your presence calms instead of consumes. You don't require constant reassurance. You don't escalate emotions to maintain closeness. You trust silence. You trust timing. This trust destabilizes avoidance because it removes their usual leverage. Distance. Spiritually, contrast emerges when you are aligned with truth rather than attachment. You no longer compromise your values to maintain connection. You honor your needs without making them someone else's burden. This integrity radiates. It creates a sense of respect that goes deeper than attraction. The avoidant begins to feel drawn back not because you pulled them, but because something in them recognizes safety without loss of self. They feel seen without being cornered, valued without being obligated. That internal conflict, wanting closeness but fearing it, softens in your presence. And once an avoidant experiences emotional safety, without entrapment, they cannot unfeel it. The contrast stays with them long after the conversation ends, long after the distance returns. Because you were not just different, you were grounding. And grounding is what their nervous system had been searching for all along. Thank you for sharing this moment of reflection and growth. May what you receive today continue to guide you back to your strength and truth. Until we meet again, walk gently, trust deeply, and remember that what is aligned with you will always find its way home.